So let's go over the topic of soreness, more specifically muscle soreness as it relates to exercise. Definitely have gone over this a couple of times, but for the newer people who don't want to dig way deep into like 200 videos, I'm going to go over it again. So what is soreness? Is it good? Is it bad? Well, we're going to learn that. Before I do that, hit the like, subscribe, the bell, all the good stuff, so you can be notified when I teach you more about evidence-based exercise. So, soreness. The reason I brought this up today is because I've had, kind of a tight muscle in my upper trap. And believe it or not, I got it from shooting pool. Play a lot of pool. I don't know, maybe I was just standing weird or something and I was breaking it. And ever since then, I had a little pulled muscle in my neck. Happens every now and then. It's more of like a trigger point thing, which is basically an area in your body that's kind of sensitive to muscle damage. Often like feels like a knot or whatever. So it's been bothering me. And generally, I know what to do. Obviously, this is what you do when you kind of pull a muscle or do something weird. It's kind of sore. Maybe you sleep on it wrong. You wake up, your neck, your upper trap's kind of sore. So normally, the best thing to do is just let it ride out, let the damage and the inflammation go down, and the soreness goes away. Or you could take, anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen. Definitely really helps. But a lot of physical therapists and people who don't really know any better suggest you stretch it, okay? And while stretching does temporarily kind of relieve the tightness, in my experience and based on literature I've read, it just makes it worse, So yesterday, it was really tight, so I started to stretch it just because I need some. I wanted some mobility in it. I was trying it out. I knew it wasn't really going to do much. So I started stretching my upper trap by looking down at your right arm and tucking your chin. Nice stretch, all right? It was temporarily relieving it. So it would get tight, be like, oof, kind of stretch it, come back. Oh, I got some mobility back for about a minute. And then it got tight again. And I kept doing it and doing it and doing it just for temporary relief. And it made it so much worse that I woke up today and I can barely turn my head to the left. Why is this? Well, the cause of the irritation to begin with was inflammation, potentially damage, And I was creating more damage and more inflammation by consistently stretching it. And that created more soreness. So it leads us to understand what soreness is. What is soreness? It's really your pain receptor's response to the inflammation and the muscle damage after using your muscles intensely or with high demand when it comes to exercise. And based on the literature, believe it or not, stretching can make it worse when you combine it with exercise. So people often ask me, should I stretch before or after my training? And I say neither. Why neither? Well, if you're doing correct exercise or a more logical approach to exercise, meaning you're choosing exercises that don't require a tremendous amount of skill or momentum or complicated movements. You use a controlled repetition cadence, especially if you're using a machine. You don't need to stretch before this. No, it's not dangerous if you don't stretch before exercise. A dynamic warm-up before something that requires a lot of impact and force, such as a sport, such as an Olympic style lift, maybe even a powerlifting competition, potentially. You may want to stretch, warm up before that. But as it relates to just exercise, safe exercises for the sake of overloading muscle and stimulating it to respond, stretching afterwards is going to make it much, much worse. And anecdotally, I experienced this yesterday just by consistently stretching the muscle. Because remember, during exercise, we create damage and inflammation. When the actin and myosin filaments, attach and detach, you create inflammation. You create microtrauma. Your pain receptors respond to this through soreness. And basically, what it means is rest your body. We did something that it was tough on your body. Give it some time to clear it up. But the soreness is just a side effect of when we place a heavy demand on our muscles. And the soreness is not necessarily an indication that you provided an adequate stimulus, okay? For instance, if you load muscles in the stretch position, such as lengthened, what do they call it? Not lengthened partials, but whatever. There's this huge thing about loading the muscle in the stretch position because it's better for muscle growth. Well, guess what? The stretching, the act of the stretching creates more microtrauma inflammation, which produces more soreness. And if you're under the impression that the soreness is a good indicator of an effective stimulus, well then yeah, you would be under the impression that loading muscles in the stretch position is more effective. But damage and microtrauma, inflammation, whatever, are not stimulus for the growth mechanism. They're just a side effect. You also don't really need to use your muscles that heavily or place that high of a demand on them to produce soreness. So your body may produce soreness because of a different stimulus or a different environment that it's not used to. Not that the stimulus or the environment in this case was substantially greater, it was merely different. For instance, I've been training on, and you can try this, try switching your machines or your exercises. This is where the muscle confusion thing comes in. I've been training on Nautilus Nitro and hammer strength for the past several months. Last week, I used all MedX equipment. And I was brutally sore for 3-4 days. I did the same exercises, chest press, row, pull down, leg press, etc. I simply changed the machine from hammer strength or Nautilus Nitro to MedX, and that produced soreness. Simply because your body's not used to that particular machine. Even though it's the same movement, even though it's the same movement, it is actually vastly different. So your body interprets it as different. Adding new exercises or even changing your machine can produce soreness. Now, if you're under the impression, again, that soreness is a good indicator of growth, then you'd be constantly switching your machines, wouldn't you? Here comes muscle confusion. You'll sometimes hear people say, well, you need to switch up your workouts every however many weeks or months or whatever, or else it's not effective anymore. Wrong. What they're basing this off of is that eventually you stop feeling the exercises in terms of soreness and damage. And again, if you're under the impression that soreness and damage is an indicator of an effective workout, you would therefore consider that exercise ineffective over time. But it's not true. So then you switch to a different exercise, you get sore, and you go, oh, my body's adapting again. No. Listen carefully to this. Your pain receptors are adapting. So it appears that your pain receptors become less sensitive to the damage associated with particular movements the more they're exposed to them. So what happens when you do for an exercise for a while? The pain receptors adapt. They become less sensitive. You stop feeling sore. Switch to a new exercise. It's a different movement pattern. It's a different movement. Your pain receptors are not adapted. Soreness again. This is where muscle confusion comes from. You should never have to change your exercises. You choose an exercise based on what you want it for. If you're using an exercise to stimulate a targeted muscle area, and you find a good one that is safe, effective, efficient, available, there's no reason to change it. If you change it, you'll experience soreness, yes. But remember, damage and inflammation, not indicators. So those are a couple of things about soreness. So to wrap it up, no, you don't need to feel sore after a workout for it to be effective. Stretching after a workout will make soreness worse. Loading muscles in stretch positions will make soreness worse. And if you are sore, what do you do about it? You just rest. Potentially take ibuprofen because it's an inflammation thing. So yeah, that's it. That's it when it comes to soreness. It's highly misunderstood. Oh, one more thing. If you're an individual that tends to get really sore from training, you're not doing anything wrong. You're also not doing anything particularly more right. Some people's pain receptors are a little more sensitive to the damage associated with exercise. Some people may be sore for days. Some people may not get sore at all. So, you don't want to, just because you're getting sore, think you're doing something wrong or think you need to incorporate something extra, because it's not going to help. If you're someone who gets sore, don't go stretching, don't go doing myofascial release. That'll make it worse. Why? Produce some more damage. One more myth busted before we wrap up. The soreness you feel, like I said, is inflammation. It's not lactic acid. Some people think you have to rub the lactic acid out of your muscles. Guys, no. No. Lactic acid, pyruvate, gets acted on by something called lactate dehydrogenase and turned into lactic acid, and then it's reconverted back into it's either pyruvate or acetyl CoA, and then used in your metabolism. Lactic acid does not sit in your muscles. It doesn't sit in your bloodstream. It's reconverted back into something that your metabolism can use for energy very, very quickly. So if someone says you need to stretch or do myofascial release to break up the lactic acid, they are clueless. They have no idea what they're talking about. So don't pay attention to them. So that's it on soreness. If you got anybody who doesn't really understand soreness, I pretty much covered all the main, basic points there. Don't forget, like, subscribe, bell notification icon. If you want a workout program that is actually based on science, like this, that will give you the best results you've ever seen with just 2 workouts a week, go to goldenerasystem.com, download my program. If you want my personal help transforming your body for the summer based on science, like what you just heard, from a real expert with over a decade of experience, join my coaching group and I'll get you in the best shape of your life with 2 days a week spent in the gym. All right? Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.